Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to your weekly dose of newsy infotainment. It's Let's Be Treasonable, coming to you from the luxurious studios of Radio Titans in Los Angeles with your cognitive dissidents on the panel this week. Comedian, world traveler, and economist, Cat Alvarado.
Hello.
Hello.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming in. Good to see you as always. And also, as always, joining us, comedian, scholar, and the black voice of reason, Mr. Tymon, Shipp.
Power to the people. It is good to be here with our good friend Cat. Good to be back on the show.
Definitely good to have you here as always. We had a little sanity break last week. Had to take a week and examine sanity. But we are back, and we are joined by our invisible extra panelist, joining us via the magic of pre-recorded sound and telephony. It is five-time Emmy nominee Will Durst with this week's Burst of Durst.
Hey guys, Will Durst here with a few choice words about the continuing investigation by Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller, and those words are, happy birthday, baby! You are now 1 whole year old. Who's the big boy? You're the big boy. Yes, you are. The proper gift for a first anniversary is supposed to be paper. But you probably don't need any more of that, considering the file cabinets full of documents you've already collected and stashed in humidity-controlled warehouses all over the leaky swamp that is Washington. The modern alternative is a clock, but neither can that be one of your priorities, as half the civilized world is reminding you how late it is while pointing at their watches, trying to encourage a modicum of alacrity. But hang on, folks. There is no timetable for justice. This could be the first at-bat in an extra-inning game. Thus far, 19 people and 3 companies have been charged with crimes, including a national security advisor, 13 Russians, a couple of aides, the son-in-law of a Russian billionaire, and the president's former campaign manager. And 5 guilty pleas have already been entered, and the chances that some people are talking their heads off is about equal to that of finding seagulls in a dumpster behind a fish cannery. The president and his designated barky dog, Rudy Giuliani, both say it's time to wrap things up, but many of us won't be happy until someone in the Trump administration is photographed with a trench coat draped over their handcuffs as they're perp-walked into federal custody, and you're just the guy to do it. So happy birthday, Robert Mueller's investigation, and many more. Who wants cake? For Let's Be Treasonable, I'm Will Durst.
Thank you very much, Will, as always. Pleasure to have your commentary. We'll be talking a little bit about the Mueller investigation in a few. So much happening this week, as it seems to be every week. But I want to start with Kat, because the last time you were on the show, things were just starting to boil over in Nicaragua. You called in from Atlanta, and you are now here in person. So I wanted to get an update, see A, how your family is doing, and B, what's going on? What's the larger situation?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, my family is alive and well, but perpetually terrified. It's a very tense time down there, and there are days where they can go into work and everything's fine. And the past couple of weeks have been a little bit more calm, and then it just picks back up again. So this week they had the first round of dialogues that the president/dictator promised to have, and I believe it was Wednesday that it happened. Wednesday they had the dialogues, and a young man who was there. There were some of the students from the university. Those were the protesters. There were some clergy people who were there, and then Ortega and his people. And one of the students just yelled, more like just stood up and passionately proclaimed that they didn't want to leave this dialogue until he resigned. Of course, that's just talk, and he was just like, yeah, no. But
as they tend to do in those situations.
Yeah, right. That kid is lucky he's alive, quite frankly. There were death threats, and on social media directed at the kid, and those were going viral, and also memes about him having all the huevos, those are eggs, in the country were going viral.
Metaphorically, not eggs.
Yeah, those are balls. Those are balls. He has all the balls. So it was interesting. And then that evening, because he didn't resign and there were no changes, people were protesting again in the streets, and they were knocking down more of the trees of life. If you don't know what the trees of life are, there are these colorful tall metal sculptures shaped like trees with lights all over them in different colors that the vice president / first lady, Chayo Murillo, put all over the Capitol to decorate the Capitol. I put that in air quotes, though, because really those trees are there to enrich her family members who she paid to make the trees. Yeah. So people were knocking them down. I think there was a reporter who got crushed by a falling tree.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. It is a bit chaotic. And then, they still have a lot of military officers in the streets. Ortega supposedly said, don't shoot at anybody, but there's rumor that they are still kind of shooting people. And there's some stuff I've heard that some of the military people who are there helping to reinforce the peace, air quotes peace, more like totalitarian stability. Is that what I can call it? I think it's more that.
If the shoe fits.
Yeah. But so there's military folks from Venezuela and from Cuba there to help keep the peace, which is creepy.
Yeah, I don't know how much help are the guys from Venezuela really there to help Nicaragua, or just to get the hell out of Venezuela, because they're dealing with some issues as well. I saw a story, I believe it was in the New York Times, that Maduro held a rally basically offering to trade the people food for votes. And this is a country where starvation is the norm these days.
Yeah, it's like an abusive relationship. It's not okay.
So much of world politics these days is
an abusive relationship. This one, ours is verbally abusive. Theirs is straight up like.
No, it gets physical from time to time. I suppose it varies on your interpretation of how it's getting physical, but I would say that with if you look at the NRA as a mistress, she's not beating the crap out of you, but she's not stopping anyone from beating the crap out of you.
Yeah, not the greatest. But back to Nicaragua, they were supposed to have the second round of dialogues on Friday, and Ortega was like, nah, I'm not going to show up. So they didn't actually happen, and I think he said he would do them, but only if there was no media present.
That usually ends well.
Yeah. So, is that just me, or is that a threat of violence? That's pretty much, I'm going to murder everybody, right?
It seems very modern day Caligula if you look at it that way. Which, considering the track record, there's no reason not to consider that as at least a possibility. Yeah,
and then Murillo, the first lady, she's still saying that the people who were protesting were a small group of right-wing vampires, or what have you. And then Ortega was going, oh, they shot the people because they were rioting and breaking things and stealing from people and blocking the roadways, which are so important for the campesinos to come into town to sell things. And the campesinos couldn't get into town, and so we were protecting them and enforcing order. And the students were like, no, we were not rioting. We were protesting with no weapons, and you guys were the ones with the weapons. And also Ortega's thugs, because he's got thugs who are like, they look like everyday people, but they have weapons. And
hey, what disrespectable dictator these days doesn't have hired thugs?
I know, right?
Well, except discounting, present country company.
Sure.
Doesn't have them yet.
Yeah, so we think. He's got more like legal thugs, legal hired guns.
Well, they seem fairly ineffective. I'm more worried about the Blackwater guys, the Eric Prince folks. What's it? No. We're going to get to that soon. But no, the government's hired thugs in the Middle East who just happens to be the brother of Betsy DeVos.
Is he Betsy? Really?
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's...
Wow.
That's not good. Oh, God. The world is going to shit. The
It
world
is.
is going to chaos. In a
Well,
handbasket.
that's why we're here, to make it,
God.
to make awareness more palatable.
So, yeah, awareness of Nicaragua, you guys. It's still in a revolution that is slowly, it's like a revolution that's running like molasses. It's happening, and hopefully it doesn't end horribly.
Well, and if people are wondering, like with so much that's happening domestically, what are you talking about that? Well, we know people firsthand who are affected by it. Mm-hmm. But if you want to take an America First kind of viewpoint, look at what's happening in South America and look at what's happening here.
It's not that different.
It really isn't.
Honestly, Nicaragua is 10 years ago, it was technically a democracy still. Right. Same guy, and he was democratically elected, and everybody was really into him, and everything was fine. Right? That all just takes 10 years to undo a democracy. We are always, at any point, 10 years away from dictatorship if we're not fucking vigilant. And that's why it's relevant. And what creeps me out is that there's propaganda that's used down there to help prop up the dictators and things. A lot of it's very anti-U.S.
But you know what? We're always, every country, pretty much, especially in Central America, is connected to the United States. Got something to do with it. I mean, whether when we propped up Bautista, we propped up the back with Cuba. We were behind the people in the Dominican. We were sending propaganda to stop certain things in there because we wanted that business. Those corporations that were over in those countries wanted. America's always got their hands with dictators.
Yeah, but I think John Oliver did a very good job covering it last week, where he was like, the stuff with Venezuela and Nicaragua, it's kind of like if someone said O.J. Simpson killed Princess Diana. Like, yeah, it is in his character, but he didn't do this one.
Right. It's one thing, we're talking about all this South American governments and coups that the U.S. has been behind. And I was bitching about the NRA earlier. Well, the NRA just this past week chose their new president, happens to be a former Lieutenant Colonel, Oliver North, who, you may recall, sold guns.
Don't say it, Dave. Don't do it. You're going to get in trouble.
How's that?
Well, they don't want you saying those things about Oliver.
Well, it should be on his resume. I haven't looked at his LinkedIn page recently, but we were the under Reagan, the government was trying to prop up what was it, Nicaragua? Was it Ortega?
No.
We were
Iran-Contra deal.
They were trying to take down Ortega.
It was the Contras.
And fund the Contras. And so they sold guns to Iran, and then they gave the money to the Contras, and somehow crack was involved, and then L.A. got shitty. I don't know where that comes into play, but I heard that was a thing.
Well, the CIA brought the crack into the neighborhoods.
I don't see why that was necessary.
Yeah, well,
this whole thing bad enough to sell guns to Iran.
It's really a value add. Like, it's one of those things. Like, and I've learned this from years of dating and Mother's Day, but at the cosmetics counters in the big stores, the department stores, they always do like a value add, like, hey, buy this and you'll get this.
Here's a tote bag. Hey, you get to take down a socialist dictator, and you know what? We'll just throw in crack.